Victoria sat at her desk, the air in the room thick with the oppressive heat of the Indian summer. The day was warm for early autumn, the atmosphere sultry. She was deep in thought, trying to organize her report on Michael/Michelle's progress. Typically, Victoria would call her old schoolmate, Barbara, but today that wasn't an option. Barbara was away again, off on one of her frequent trips, unreachable by phone. Victoria wondered how many times Barbara had been unavailable to Michael in the past. She pondered, half amused, whether Michael would still be sitting in Barbara's garden now, elegantly dressed in Laura Ashley clothes, had his mother been more present in his life. Well, Michael was in her garden. Michelle had made great strides recently, leaving her skirts behind and pushing forward with her life. It troubled Victoria more than she cared to admit, although she couldn't fully explain why. She had felt sadness when her own daughters graduated, but this felt different. Stronger. Shaking herself out of the spiral of thoughts, Victoria pushed aside her emotions and focused on the task at hand. She had a letter to write to Michael's mother. Dear Barb, October 1st. I hope this letter finds you well and that you enjoyed your trip. By the time you read this, we will need to make a decision about Michael's future here, as well as his place at St. Andrews. I'm sending this letter now so that you can have a look at my current thoughts before we discuss things at the end of the month. Everything is going well. I know it sounds cliché, but honestly, it's almost going too well. I'm not sure why, but I can't shake a feeling of concern. Michelle, well, that's how I think of your child now, and I apologize if I mix up names and genders in this letter, is doing wonderfully. She's amiable, mature, polite, and now, more than ever, consistently meets the goals I set for her without complaint. She's made remarkable progress. I remember telling you last time we spoke that I was concerned about the boy who was supposed to be Michelle's little sister. That didn't happen. It turns out he got into trouble, attacking a security officer while being held in a juvenile detention center. The plan was for him to be given the option of reform school or coming to stay with me, but after the attack, the state decided to try him as an adult. He'll be in prison for the next few years. I certainly don't need that kind of violence in my home, but I was saddened by the situation for Michelle's sake. However, Michelle's recent development has been astonishing. In just a few weeks, she's shown more progress than I've seen in charges that took years to improve. It's been rapid, and while I'd like to believe her final confrontation with her sister in August had something to do with it, I'm still uncertain. Something has changed in Michelle. It's something I didn't cause and something that's beyond my experience in these matters. I think part of the reason for this sudden growth is the blossoming romance between Michelle and the girl I mentioned after the production last month. Do you remember her? Emma Austin? She's a strong-willed, intelligent girl with a big personality. She reminds me a lot of us back in school. Michael adores her, and I've allowed them to date occasionally, giving them weekends to spend together. Michael is allowed to dress as a man, although I still make sure she follows certain feminine rules when at home. If her eyebrow grooming isn't perfect before a date, I don't say anything, as long as she adheres to the other rules. I believe the fear that I might interfere with her dates or force her into feminine attire is both motivating and deterring for Michelle. She seems to genuinely enjoy spending time with Emma because, after each date, she's even more determined to excel in her feminine studies. A couple of weekends ago, I went with them to the historic Plymouth plantation. Emma's grandmother was supposed to join us but had to cancel due to the heat. She's elderly and frail. Emma almost canceled, but in the end, Michael and her grandmother convinced her to come. I was pleased with Michelle's behavior that day. Even without the constraints of her usual role, she was a gentleman. She didn't take offense when Emma teased her about what she would look like in colonial women's dress. I think Emma was surprised by how well Michelle handled the joke. Michelle simply smiled with dignified acceptance and gave Emma a hug. No awkwardness, no embarrassed stammering, just a simple, graceful response. If I didn't know her better, I might have thought she enjoyed the teasing. Looking back, I think the biggest source of my uncertainty about Michael's emotional and mental state right now is his transformation around Emma. With her, Michael comes across as a confident young man, comfortable in his masculinity and in the affection of the girl he's with. Yet, he shows a gentler side to her and to the world around him, a truly kind and sensitive young man. However, when he's home with me, dressed in skirts and camisoles, Michelle seems like the perfect example of a refined young lady, polite, well-groomed, and always smiling. While I accept the pleasant demeanor, since it's expected of her, something about the speed with which she's adapted to this life feels off. Normally, I've seen boys struggle through the early days of adjusting to femininity, experiencing humiliation and awkwardness. But Michelle, almost immediately, has become completely comfortable with her gentle femininity. If this is a facade, it's the most convincing one I've ever witnessed. If she's pretending, I'm not sure how to reach her, short of confronting her directly, which could cause harm to both of us. Perhaps I've simply grown too comfortable with the familiar routines of transformation. Maybe I've become someone who expects things to unfold a certain way. But on a lighter note, Michelle has become quite at ease with me. Just last week, she played a prank worthy of a sorority sister. While I was out, she snuck into my room and swapped out my cosmetics for some long-lasting ones I had used on her early on. She knew I had a date that evening and that I would be putting on makeup. Yes, I still go for bold eye makeup when I'm dressing up, and yes, you are the one who taught me how. I spent the next 4 days wearing the war paint until it finally faded. Of course, Michelle spent those days in her little girl clothes, playing with her dolls as a consequence, but she accepted the punishment with grace and humor. She even teased me about my high color in the sweetest way, which almost made me laugh out loud. If this is how she's going to behave, I could easily get used to her being around all the time. Another positive development is that with the new school year, I've started home lessons. I think Michelle's main issue at St. Andrews was boredom. She's so intelligent that it's almost unsettling. I don't believe she's ever been truly challenged in the classroom. Her photographic memory has allowed her to just repeat what the teachers say. But I'm setting out to challenge her in a way that will push her limits. Our lessons are taking a distinctly feminine turn. Aside from Michelle becoming an excellent cook, we've delved into some fascinating subjects. Geometry led us to creating our own embroidery patterns, and that, in turn, brought us to studying blood chemistry, especially the challenge of removing blood stains from white linen without ruining our samplers. Our history project for the semester involves uncovering the forgotten women of the past. Michelle has shown a surprising enthusiasm for this project, and I started to suspect she might be more interested in the opportunity to go to the library dressed as Michael, but after I stopped ordering boys' clothes for her, she continued her research. I'm not a historian, but I think what she's working on could be worthy of publication. In any case, when Michael returns to St. Andrews after the new year, he will be far ahead of his peers. As I reflect on all of this, I've come to a conclusion: you can now count on that outcome. Despite my reservations, I believe Michael will have earned the right to wear trousers again by then. I need to get this letter in the mail. With love, Victoria. After sealing and stamping the envelope, Victoria leaned back in her chair, looking out the window. She saw Michelle, dressed in the soft sweater and skirts that they had just bought for her, sitting under a shady tree, engrossed in a book. Probably another psychology book, Victoria mused. Know thy enemy? She wondered. Or perhaps it was know thyself. Victoria sighed, picking up the calculus textbook that a professor friend had recommended as a good review guide. Keeping ahead of her young charge, academically, wasn't nearly as enjoyable as planning the next little embarrassment for her. But then she glanced at Michelle's face, absorbed in her work with fierce focus. While it might not be as much fun, it was undoubtedly rewarding in a deeply personal way. Michael sighed, setting the book he'd been struggling to read aside. It couldn't hold his attention, his mind was occupied with his upcoming date with Emma. He decided to head upstairs, put on the male outerwear Victoria allowed him to wear when he went out, and take the bus to Emma's Nana's house, where he would change back into Michelle for Emma. The irony amused him. Victoria had made a huge concession by allowing him to dress as a boy for Emma, but he would switch back to a girl for the same girl. The thought of Victoria discovering his double life made him chuckle. Emma had warned him about watching a chick flick that night, whatever that was. He wasn't nervous about going out dressed when Emma was with him. She supported him, encouraged him, and made sure he stayed out of trouble. She would never expose him to the humiliation of being discovered as a boy under his skirts, as Victoria once had. Besides, outings like this made Emma happy, and, Michael thought, made her very excited. A grin spread across his face, completely at odds with his perfectly made-up appearance. Later, they would return to Emma's place for more lessons in dancing and lovemaking. Being with Emma in that way was one of the most affirming experiences of his life. He felt a rush of desire, his body responding to the thought, only to be painfully restrained by his tight satin panties. Michael knew, even if Victoria didn't, that it was Emma's acceptance of his feminine side that gave him the confidence to wear his male clothes. Emma liked him, and that made everything else easier to handle. He worked harder on perfecting those little feminine details for Emma than he did for his own interest or for Victoria's increasingly hollow threats. Surprisingly, he was even beginning to feel some affection for Victoria, though he hadn't yet found a way to express it. He'd been disappointed when his David hadn't shown up, though, in hindsight, it was probably for the best. He could spend more time with Emma. He sighed again, picked up his book, and brushed off his skirt as he stood. It was hot, and he was thirsty. As he walked toward the house, he spotted Victoria talking on the phone through the study window. Maybe she'd like a cold drink too. Just as he was about to reach the door, it swung open. Victoria, frowning with concern, looked at him. "Michelle, Emma's on the phone for you. She sounds upset, but she won't calm down enough to explain what's wrong." Michael's heart sank. He broke into a run, despite the challenge of moving quickly in his calf-length skirt and heels. He snatched the phone, momentarily slipping into his Michelle voice. "Emma, what's wrong?" "Michael? Is that you?" Her voice cracked, and he could feel her distress. Michael dropped his voice deeper. "Yes, it's me, love. What's happened?" "Oh, God, Michael," Nana collapsed. Emma's voice trembled with sobs as she struggled to regain control. "I couldn't wake her up. I called 911, and they just took her away. They wouldn't let me go with her. I'm too upset to drive. Michael, what if she dies?" Michael's voice became sharp, commanding, surprising Victoria, who overheard him. "Emma, where are you?" "At home, Michael." "I'm at home," Emma replied, barely able to speak through her hysteria. "We'll be there in 15 minutes. "Hang in there, love," Michael said, then hung up and turned to Victoria. "Did you hear that?" She nodded, having heard the conversation clearly. "Let's go. She needs me." He moved toward the door. Victoria caught up with him in the entrance hall and put a hand on his shoulder, stopping him. "Michelle." "Michael." He turned, impatience in his eyes. "Michael, look at yourself. You can't go out like that. You need to change." Michael glanced at himself in the hall mirror and shrugged. He ran upstairs and came back down moments later, still dressed as a girl but carrying his purse. Victoria spluttered in disbelief. "This will have to do," Michael said grimly as he headed for the door. Still concerned for his safety, Victoria stopped him again. "Are you sure you can do this? We might end up at the hospital." "I have to do this, Victoria. 2 reasons. First, there's no time, Emma needs me right now." Victoria nodded, understanding how deeply he cared for her. "And the second reason, Michelle?" "Nana only knows Michelle," Michael replied softly. "She's never met Michael, and she doesn't know me as anything other than Emma's special friend." Victoria was taken aback, wanting to ask 1,000 questions, but Michael was already buckling into the passenger seat. She promised herself she'd follow up on his revelations once the crisis had passed. The drive to Emma's house was mostly silent, not because Victoria preferred it that way, but because as soon as they hit the road, Michael pulled down the makeup mirror and started touching up Michelle's makeup with cosmetics from her purse. Once she was satisfied with the results, which Victoria could tell were expertly done, Michael fell into a somber, reflective mood. Victoria interpreted this as his way of processing the magnitude of what he was about to do. She had never seen one of her charges willingly present themselves to an outsider as a girl boy. It filled Victoria with a deep sense of pride for Michelle's willingness to make such a sacrifice for a friend. But was it really a sacrifice? What had Michelle said? Nana only knows Michelle? Victoria recalled that Michael spent a lot of time at Emma's grandmother's house. The grandmother spoke with a French accent. When Victoria had called her to discuss Michael's visits, she had thought nothing of hearing the woman call him Michelle. She assumed it was just the French version of Michael. But now, Victoria realized Michelle had been dressing as a girl outside her home, clearly for Emma. No wonder the changes in him had come so quickly. A new thought struck her. Had they been sexually active? She shook her head, dismissing the thought as absurd. Michelle had stayed over at Emma's house the night of their date. Michelle had said Nana only knew Michelle, so it must have been as a girl that she spent the night. And girls at sleepovers shared rooms. Yes, they had probably been sexually active, and judging by Michael's newfound male confidence, they'd probably been very good at it. It also explained why he hadn't balked at Emma's teasing about girl clothes at Plymouth. And contraception? Victoria hoped they had been careful. As they pulled into Nana's driveway, Emma rushed out to meet them. Michelle jumped out of the car before it had fully stopped and met her halfway. With a comforting embrace, Michelle calmed Emma, offering a mix of masculinely protective warmth and femininely gentle care. Once Emma was able to speak, they quickly moved to the still-running car. Both got into the back seat, and Michelle told Victoria which hospital Nana had been taken to. Michael dug into his purse and pulled out a handkerchief, handing it to Emma. It was only then that Emma fully realized what Michelle was wearing. Stunned, she blurted out, "Michael, you're Michelle." The tension in the car eased a little as both Victoria and Michelle chuckled softly. "You don't know the half of it, Emma dear," Victoria remarked, which made Michelle smile again. "True, and Victoria," Michael said, before turning back to Emma. "Look, love, there's a lot you don't know, but I promise I'll explain everything later. Right now, though, I think you and Nana need Michelle more than you need Michael." Emma looked at the beautifully feminine face she'd become so fascinated with over the past few weeks and saw the care in it. Nodding, she leaned into her boy/girlfriend and let herself be held quietly for the rest of the trip. The hospital emergency room was chaotic, as always. The two teens were completely ignored by the busy medical staff, and Victoria could see that Emma was about to break down again, while Michelle was on the verge of exploding. Victoria intervened before either could lose control. Victoria wasn't ignored, and it didn't take long for the attending physician to approach them. The news was good. Emma's quick thinking and the EMT's rapid response had saved Nana. She was weak and in intensive care, but the doctor was optimistic about her recovery. Emma nearly swooned in relief. Nana was awake and alert, though she wouldn't be going home anytime soon. The two teens sat down in the waiting area while Victoria sat across from them, letting Michelle offer what comfort she could. It was then that Victoria noticed Michelle casting surreptitious glances at someone at the admission desk. Curious, Victoria looked to see what was catching her attention. A nurse was staring at them, and Michelle had noticed. After a closer look, Michelle smiled. She recognized the nurse and knew why she was staring. A month ago, or even just a week ago, Victoria might have let Michelle stew in discomfort over the nurse's marked interest. However, Michelle had been behaving impeccably, and more importantly, had done something that Victoria felt merited a reward. She walked over to Michelle, sat beside her, and whispered in her ear. "Relax, dear. She's staring because she knows me, not because she's figured out you're not a real girl. She's a friend who takes care of my little girls when they get sick. She knows what I do with my little boys, and she's trying to figure out if you or Emma, or both of you, are one of my petticoat boys. But don't worry, she's the soul of discretion. Just take it easy." Michelle smiled weakly, took a deep breath, and relaxed. An administrator came over to ask about their connection to Nana. When he was told that Emma was Nana's granddaughter and guardian while her father was overseas, he frowned. Your grandmother won't be able to go home for at least a few days. I'm afraid we'll need to call protective services to arrange care for you. He walked off before anyone could say anything. Emma froze. Oh God, what will they do with me? She began to panic at the thought of the agency's options. No! Not a foster family. I can't handle that on top of everything else. Being alone with strangers. Why can't I just stay home? I'm 17. I can drive. Michael tried to comfort her, pulling her closer. He looked at Victoria, his artfully made-up eyes wide and pleading. Aunt Victoria, can't Emma stay with us? His voice broke into a sob, and he swallowed hard to regain composure. Please? Well, they are calling protective services, Victoria said. That may take this out of our hands. She paused, considering how Michelle would respond. I do have some contacts there. If we catch them early enough, I might be able to work something out. Michelle smiled at her. Please, Aunt Victoria. Victoria nodded. All right, Michelle. I'll make a phone call and see what I can do. One thing, though. Her tone grew firm as she whispered into Michelle's ear, making sure Emma couldn't hear. If we do this, if Emma comes to live with us, even temporarily, it won't change your situation at home. Are you ready to be Michelle with her around? Michael gave her a small smile. As you probably guessed, Aunt Victoria, I'm usually Michelle with her anyway. Now she'll just understand why I'm so good at being a girl. Victoria smiled and kissed Michelle on the cheek before heading off to make the call. She was determined to bring Emma into her home. Part 2, Autumn Colors and Other Surprises. Dear Barb, October 20th. Things have changed significantly since my last letter to you, and since I still can't reach you by phone, I decided to send this note instead. Emma Austin, the girl I mentioned to you, is now living with Michelle and me. I won't go into all the details, but 3 weeks ago, Emma's grandmother had a heart attack and stroke. Michelle asked me to take Emma in, and I did, using some of my connections. Afterward, it was decided that her grandmother would need full-time care in a nursing home and couldn't return home to care for Emma. The grandmother is alert but weak. Things moved quickly from there. Your son is quite persistent when he cares about something, Barb, and Nana convinced Emma's father, who's too busy to come home, to appoint me as Emma's guardian while the grandmother recovers. Since a full recovery is unlikely, but still better than the father coming home, this means I'll be Emma's guardian until she reaches adulthood. You might be surprised to hear this, but I don't mind at all. It turns out Michael had already shared Michelle with Emma, and Emma has been even more instrumental in Michelle's progress than I originally realized. She now knows everything, and though she was shocked to learn how Michelle lives, she adapted quickly. She's become Michelle's big sister when he's at home in petticoat, and his girlfriend and confidant when they're outside. She agreed to this the night we discussed making the guardianship permanent. There was one little blow-up, though. Emma tattled on Michelle last week. It seems Michelle had been a bit less tactful during a conversation with her big sister. Upset, Emma decided to use me to get back at Michelle. I was fine with it, actually, because I had one final test in mind for our girl boy. I told Michelle that, since Emma's school was hosting a Sadie Hawkins dance, Emma had already asked Michael to go. I wanted Michelle, not Michael, to find a date so they could double date. Emma would still protect Michelle, but it would be a nerve-wracking experience for her until she was back safely inside my home after the dance. I even wondered aloud if Michelle might get her first kiss from a boy. Emma's response was unexpected. She exploded. "He's mine," she yelled. "Pants or skirts, whatever, I won't be part of that. I won't let him be part of that." I was taken aback, but what really surprised me was Michelle. She told Emma to calm down and that it was okay. Emma snapped at him, "What's this? Do you want to go out with a boy?" Michael calmly responded, No, I don't. The only person I want to go out with is you, but when you agreed to let me stay here, you promised to obey me and trust me. I said I would do it, but I'd feel better if you went too, so I wouldn't be alone with a boy like that. That stopped me. It was the first time Michelle had shown such trust in me. I relented, of course. She still faced a punishment, but she went to the dance as a boy, with a new salon-style perm and frosted highlights. Sandy outdid herself this time. Even there, Emma was ahead of me. She had a straw farmer's hat for her hillbilly look to cover Michelle's frosted curls. Despite all this, I have little more to teach Michael. He has become everything I hoped he would when I first took on his case. I'll keep him in skirts a little longer because I like it that way. I'm selfish, I know, but Emma likes it too, and when Emma is pleased, so is Michael. He wouldn't mind much, even if he had a choice. What I'd like to propose is that you come spend Thanksgiving here. You could have dinner with us and see the lovely young woman your daughter might have been. You'll also see the fine young man your son has become. And you might even want to meet the woman I believe will soon be your daughter-in-law. I think a graduation party, where Michelle gets her trousers back full-time, would be a nice celebration. Of course, I'll keep this secret from Michelle, though I may need to involve Emma in the planning. Please call me as soon as you've read this and my earlier letter. Now, I have to go. The girls are heading into town to check out costumes for a Halloween ball at the local country club. I've decided to let Michael dress however he pleases. They've been brainstorming ever since I told him that, and they're determined to keep their plans a secret, especially from me. I'll make sure to load the camera with fresh film. Victoria frowned as she reread the letter she had just written. She had wanted to be more direct and tell her friend to attend, but she hadn't. Good manners, mixed with her growing concern that the situation might worsen, kept her from being more blunt. She was growing more and more fond of Michelle each day. One thing that struck her was that, during Michelle's time in her home, Barb had never once contacted her about her son. Victoria had made all the calls and written all the letters. Barb had never even asked to speak to Michelle. Of course, Victoria had told her early on that she strongly discouraged any contact, except in emergencies. Still, most of the other mothers of her charges had forgotten that request at least once. Frustrated, she prepared the letter for mailing. Her two charges were eager to go into town for costume ideas. Then, a thought struck Victoria. If Michelle was going to the party as Michael, why not let them go out alone? It would give them a chance to plot in secret, and Victoria could use the time to focus on planning for her next charge. Not having a resident big sister for the new charge would make things more complicated. Plus, Michelle hadn't driven since arriving and would enjoy the treat. She decided to break the news to them at lunch. It was hard to say who was more stunned, Michael by Victoria's offer or Victoria by Michael's response. But, Victoria, I had planned on going to town as Michelle, so I can't drive. My license says I'm male. I don't plan on speeding, he added quickly as Victoria raised an eyebrow, but it would still be too risky if someone else caused an accident. But, Michelle, I said you could go to the party however you wanted. I assumed you'd need to find a costume fitting your character's gender. Michelle smiled softly. Yes, Aunt Victoria, but I thought that, since I still have to stay in character here, I would look for a costume that allowed me to do that without causing trouble for my behavior. I was thinking of asking Sandy and Carolyn for advice on how to handle it without undoing all their work. He paused, recalling when Victoria had allowed him to dress as a boy. That is, if you don't mind me seeking their help. I know last time you insisted I do the transformation myself. Still surprised, Victoria shook her head. No, that's fine, Michelle. The last time had a purpose. This time, it's a reward for your hard work. In fact, I'll call Carolyn right after lunch and tell her to help you however you need. And whatever they do can be undone after the party if needed. You've earned this, Michelle. I'm truly proud of you. Michelle went completely still, his face a mix of surprise, pleasure, and pride. Emma just sat there, beaming at her sister/boyfriend. Suddenly, Michelle stood up. "Please excuse me, Aunt Victoria," he said in a choked voice, then rushed out of the room. Victoria rose, intending to follow, but Emma stopped her. "She'll be okay, Victoria. Let her be. He's just so happy, and for all the progress, Michael is still learning to handle the softer emotions you've introduced him to. He's embarrassed that his joy made him cry in front of you. He'll be back once he's regained his composure and fixed his makeup. You should be pleased. He's really becoming quite the lady." Victoria raised an eyebrow, a sardonically amused look on her face. "Oh. Perhaps too much of a lady, Emma?" She was aware that her charges were still intimate, and she had been concerned about the potential consequences until she confirmed that Michelle and Emma were using contraception after their first night together. Emma shot her guardian a thoroughly pleased look. "No, Victoria, Michael is all man when it counts, just more caring and sensitive than the other boys I know." The two exchanged a look of smug satisfaction. Michelle returned to the table, apologizing for her quick exit. Victoria waved them off, masking her emotions with a facade of firmness. "Now, since Michelle can't drive, I'll give Emma the keys to the Lincoln. It has more space than her little car, and you might find something today that needs the room. Now go on and get ready." Both teens laughed and jumped to their feet, but Michelle had one more surprise for Victoria that day. Before leaving the room, she shyly kissed Victoria on the cheek. "Thank you, Aunt Victoria," she whispered, then rushed out, leaving a bemused Victoria behind. Emma drove the Lincoln with more caution than usual, compared to her zippy little Honda. Once they were on the road to Kingston, she relaxed enough to speak. "Are you okay with this trip? I know it's not exactly been the easiest place for you. Seems like all of Victoria's feminizing friends are in that town. They may not be able to resist taking a piece out of you." Michelle nodded. "It'll be fine. I've learned a lot lately. Mostly, they just want to play with me. When I give as good as I get, they have fun. Besides, they have more to lose than I do. This area is pretty conservative. Their businesses could take a serious hit if it ever came out what they've been doing with Victoria." Emma nodded, impressed by Michelle's insight. "You don't mind going dressed? I mean, this was the perfect chance to go as a guy again. Victoria even gave you the green light for Carolyn and Sandra to help you put yourself together after the ball. You could have spent a whole week looking like your male self instead of living in skirts." "Nah. Besides, are you planning to leave me?" Emma jerked the steering wheel in shock, swerving the car. "Hell no! I told her, and I'll tell you too, Michael Nash. You are mine. The formalities are just that, formalities. You are mine, and I am yours. You're stuck with me, Miss or Mister. End of statement." Pleased by her response, Michael chuckled. "I love you too, darling. So, getting out of skirts isn't an issue for me anymore. You like them, and I want to please you. I expect I'll be wearing them on and off for the rest of my life because making you happy is a big priority for me." His voice trailed off, and Emma encouraged him to finish his thought. He took a deep breath and whispered, "And I like them, too." "Oh, Michelle, I'm so glad." "I really am. I was worried that once Victoria signed off on your return to that damn school, I'd never have my girlfriend back. If you'd done it for me like it was some kind of sacrifice, I'd know, and I would have hated it." Unlike Michelle, who was fashionably dressed in a skirt and blazer set, Emma wore her beloved jeans. The jeans had caused a bit of tension when Emma first moved in. Michael had wanted to wear them, but Victoria had refused. "Emma already knows how and when to be a lady, Michelle. You're still learning. Of course, I could ask Emma to hold off wearing them until you're advanced enough for me to let you wear them too." Michael had disliked that idea. First, because Emma loved her jeans and he didn't want her deprived, and second, because she looked incredibly sexy in them, and he didn't want to lose that pleasure either. So, Victoria had relented, and Emma continued to wear her jeans for both their enjoyment. Victoria, being Victoria, couldn't resist teasing about who wore the pants in this relationship, but as long as Emma was happy and looking so sexy, Michael handled it with grace and a smile. What he hadn't realized was that it was this very comfort with her games that Victoria had been looking for, and had now found. Michel reached across the seat to gently squeeze Emma's denim-clad thigh, resting his hand there. They drove like that for most of the way, until they reached the outer limits of Kingston and the university campus. At a stoplight, Emma noticed Michael staring longingly at the sign for pre-registration for the spring term. When she asked if something was wrong, he merely shook his head. They continued toward the business square where Mauritia Chalet was located. Emma carefully parked and turned off the engine, then faced her lover. "You sure you want to go through with this? It could really hurt her, you know." "Hey, it was your idea, remember?" Michael replied. "You said it was the right thing to do, that it would bring closure. Now you're getting cold feet?" He paused, then added, "For all my bravado back there, Sandy scares the hell out of me. She's been a lot easier on me since August, but she knows exactly how to get to me, and she loves it. She has a way of getting me so turned on that I get rock hard, and then she cuts me down with it." Emma took his hand. "Don't worry, sweet. Anything that makes you rock hard, I can help make pliable again, and I promise you'll love it." Her voice dropped to a husky whisper that sent a sensual shiver through him. "Seriously, we could do something else and still get the effect you want." Michael thought about it for a moment. It was tempting, but he shook his head. "No, this is the right way. She needs to see me as I am now. Not how she wants to see me in her mind. We can't move forward until she does." Emma smiled. That was the answer she had been hoping for, but she needed to be sure he understood too. "Okay, let's go. I saw Caro looking at us through the window. She probably thinks Victoria is dragging you in again. Sandy must be getting out the frosting kit." The patrons of the shop only noticed how lovely the two young women were as they entered. Carolyn and Sandra greeted them and ushered them into the back room. Sandy spoke first, her tone dejected. "Well, Victoria called," she said. "She told us this was your show, Michael. What do you want us to do?" She looked very sad, and Michael wondered why. Carolyn spoke next. "We know you're going to the ball and that Victoria said you could pick your own costume. Tell us what you have in mind, and we'll see what we can do. Honestly, you've become such a skilled actress, you could pull off anything." Michael glanced at Emma, who nodded back. He reached into the large shoulder bag he carried and pulled out an 8x10 manila envelope. "Before we go any further, you should know that our plans are a secret, especially from Victoria. If you can't agree to that, we'll just go somewhere else, maybe another salon." There was a tone of resolve in his voice. Both women stared at him in disbelief. He was willing to risk discovery by going to a different salon? Finally, Carolyn spoke. "We already knew that, Michael. Victoria told us and asked that we keep your confidence. We promised her, and we promise you the same. Don't we, Sandy?" The other woman nodded. "Okay, look at this," Michael said, pulling a photo from the envelope and placing it on the table. It was a promotional image from a famous historical movie. "We saw this, and the similarities between our facial structures and those people struck me. I remembered the outfits you got for Beth and me for that parade float. Now, this is what we want to do." The planning took most of the afternoon, with Carolyn and Sandy having to leave periodically to assist other customers. Gradually, both women became more involved, almost taking over the project from the excited teenagers. Finally, Sandy tallied up the final list of materials. "Cosmetics, hair dye, spirit gum," she concluded. "All right, I think that's everything. While I was out on the floor earlier, I called the costume shop around the corner and let them know to expect you soon." Michael, that shop isn't connected to Victoria's activities, as far as I know, so be careful when you're getting fitted. It might be a good idea for Emma to help you instead of the staff when you're changing into your costume for fitting and alterations. Oh, and I almost forgot. She ran to a nearby closet and returned with a familiar box. Here, you might need this. Michael took the box and thanked her. Carolyn smiled. Thank you, Michael, she said, stressing the U. For letting us be part of this. I know we made your life hard, but that was part of the plan. I'd like to think we've become less your enemies and more like friends. Michael stood and kissed each woman demurely on the cheek. Not just friends, Carolyn. You are friends. It just took me a while to realize that not all friendships start out friendly. Now I have to go, or the shop will close. Michael? If you and Emma want, I could come over the afternoon of the party to help you both get ready. That dye can be messy, even if it washes out with the special solvent soap. If you don't mind, Caro, I think that would be wonderful. Mithi Chilial, Emma teased. Could we go? I'm tired and hungry, and those fittings will take at least an hour, especially mine. I'm going to be turned into a human pincushion, I just know it. They got home around 9 p.m. to find that Marie had kept supper warm for them. Victoria insisted they eat dinner with her in the study on trays while she quizzed them about their day. Michael was mischievously evasive about where they went and what they bought. Oh, but I will tell you that Caro promised to come over Saturday afternoon and personally handle my makeover. Emma swatted him with a lace throw pillow. Hey, don't forget about me. She promised she'd do my makeup too. Michael gave Michelle's cattiest look and sweetly said, oh dear, that's right. Maybe you should call her, Auntie Victoria, and see if she can be here by 9 a.m. instead. Both women jumped on him with pillows, turning Victoria's formal Victorian study into a slapstick comedy of laughter, petticoats, and pillow feathers. Michael couldn't remember having a better evening in Victoria's house. The sealed garment boxes with their costumes arrived the Thursday before the party. Michelle and Emma locked themselves away in Emma's room. Victoria allowed Emma the privacy of a locked door, a privilege Michael still didn't have, to try on their costumes. The alterations were perfect, saving them from asking Marie for help or, worse, attempting to fix the clothes themselves. Caro arrived just in time for lunch on Saturday. After the meal, the three conspirators retired to Emma's room for the grand transformation. By unspoken agreement, both Marie and Victoria avoided the upstairs that afternoon, afraid they might peek if given the chance. At 5:30, Carolyn came to find Victoria and told her they were ready for the unveiling. Victoria and Marie hurried to the parlor, both carrying cameras to capture the moment. Carolyn returned and took her place on the settee next to Victoria. From outside the parlor, Michael's voice, deeper than Victoria was used to hearing, called, "Ready in there?" Victoria responded tartly, "I was ready 2 hours ago. Now get in here." Emma's soft laugh followed, and moments later, Rhett Butler escorted Scarlett O'Hara across the threshold of the room. Scarlett wore a classic reproduction of the famous movie ball gown, the bodice revealing an expanse of creamy cleavage. Her hair, darkened with dye, was styled in sausage curls around her head. Opera-length satin gloves covered her arms, and a black beauty patch adorned her left cheek beneath her sparkling eye. Holding one hand in Rhett's and the other lifting her heavy skirt, Scarlett curtsied low to her royal audience. Rhett stood in black evening wear, complete with tails and a cane. His hair had been dyed black, and his skin artfully darkened and coarsened by Caro's expert makeup. His brows and upper lip were covered in hair that hadn't been there earlier, false brows and a mustache, but they were impressively done. He wore white formal gloves on his hands, and gleaming boots adorned his feet. He bowed deeply to the women, making a graceful Regency-style leg. "My God, Caro, it's like they stepped off the movie screen and into my house," Victoria marveled. She studied the boy she had worked so hard to transform and shook her head in disbelief. Scarlett giggled, and Victoria's jaw dropped in shock. "No, you blew it," Emma said, disgust clear in her voice. "We could have made it out of here without her knowing if you'd just kept your mouth shut." Now, Rhett Dolan, Scarlett drawled in a dreadful southern accent, mimicking Michael's voice. Y'all know I was gonna tell her lil ol self before we left anyway. Victoria stood there, speechless, her mouth hanging open. Caro was visibly struggling to contain her laughter. Marie looked stunned. Finally, Victoria managed to choke out, Michael? I mean, Michelle, is that you? Michael knelt before Victoria, his silks and satins swirling around him. Yes, Victoria, he replied softly, his voice surprisingly male. It's me. But why? You could have been anyone, anything. Why a female? Michael smiled, his expression radiant. Because, dear Victoria, this is me now. Or at least, a part of me. You see, two women who I've come to care about like this side of me. More importantly, I've come to like it too. I'm still a man. He paused, reconsidered, and shook his head, sending his curls bouncing. No, I'm more of a man, because none of this. He gestured at the female finery, threatens me anymore. It's part of me, and I've come to like myself quite a bit in the past few weeks. I wanted you to know that, Victoria. With a muffled "oh, God," Victoria pulled him into an embrace, tears streaming down her face. Then, she jumped to her feet and ran from the room. Michael moved to follow, but Marie stopped him, also crying, though smiling. I'll see to her, Michael. She'll be fine. You and your young lady just go and enjoy yourselves. Caro quickly touched up everyone's makeup and took pictures with both cameras. Then she ushered them out, planning to find Victoria. She figured Victoria could use a drink and a good cry, surely there was some bubbly in the house somewhere. She'd just have to find it. The next morning, no one was up for breakfast. Michelle, recognizing the issue, mixed up a hair of the dog remedy favored by one of his mother's consorts, serving tall, frosty restoratives to each hangover victim. A few hours later, when hunger set in, Michelle made omelets and muffins to satisfy their empty stomachs. When he finished his own, the last one, naturally, he joined the table where Emma was regaling the women with stories of their adventures. You remember Paige, don't you, Victoria? The boy who made Michael's life miserable at the play? He was there as a pirate, and he was so taken with Miss Scarlett. He even got her to dance. God, I thought he was going to drool the makeup off her fake chests. But, get this, his pants fell down, and he wasn't wearing any undies. He was quite the sight, hopping off the dance floor, trying to hold up his pants with one hand and keep his male organy covered with the other. Emma glanced at Michael as he set his plate down and took a seat. How did that happen, Michelle, dear? She asked sweetly, in the most innocent tone. Michelle let out an unladylike snort. He shouldn't have been carrying a real knife on that silly belt of his. Knives are dangerous, was all Michael said, and the women burst into laughter. With a satisfied smile, Michael continued, my only regret is that he left after the dance and missed the unmasking. Emma and I won first prize for Best Couples Costume. I would have loved to see his face when he realized he'd been hitting on a guy. I do hope someone tells him. Then, a sly thought crossed Michael's mind, and he glanced at Victoria. Aunt Victoria? There's no chance that Paige has gotten into trouble around here, is there? You know, you could talk to his mom, offer to help her with him a little. Victoria spluttered, oh no. None of that. I don't take students from the immediate area. They're too likely to be recognized, no matter how well I do my job. Besides, his father is an arrogant paternalistic idiot, and he would never agree, more's the pity. Too bad. I'd even stay past Christmas to help with that mess, and I wouldn't feel a bit guilty about it like Beth did with me. The offhand comment about his upcoming departure cast a shadow over the impromptu brunch, and it broke up shortly after. Caro had to leave for home, Victoria retreated to her study, closing the door behind her, and Marie began gathering the dishes to clean. The two young people decided to go for a walk. Life eventually settled back into the familiar routine in Victoria's household. Studies and school took up most of Michael's and Emma's time. Both took the college board exams the week after the ball. Michael returned the next week for further testing, mentioning only that he was exploring several options for college and that the tests were part of that process. About 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, Emma heard shouting coming from Victoria's study. Concerned that her lover had gotten into trouble again with her unpredictable guardian, she peeked through the open door just in time to see Victoria slamming her antique phone down onto its cradle. Damn that woman! How can she do that to him? Victoria buried her head in her hands on her desk, looking utterly defeated. Emma quietly entered and placed a hand on Victoria's head. Victoria? What's wrong? When Victoria mumbled that it was nothing, Emma wasn't convinced. No, I've never seen you upset over nothing, and you are upset. Now, talk to me. It's really nothing, just something I can't fix. That was Barbara, Michelle's mother. She was responding to my last 2 letters. Victoria explained her plan for a surprise graduation party for Michael. She just called to tell me she's going on another vacation with her latest boyfriend. Seems they'll be touring the Caribbean for the holidays, leaving tomorrow and returning after the new year. As for Michael's future at St. A's, I'm supposed to do whatever you think is best, darling. You seem to do so much better with him than I do. Damn woman. To do anything, you first have to care enough to try. When I think about the waste she nearly caused with her neglect, I just want to do bodily harm to her. Emma moved behind Victoria and began massaging the tension out of her shoulders. Well, you care, Victoria, and so do I. There are a lot of people here who care about our Michael Michelle, and that's all that matters. If she doesn't see what she has in him, it's her loss and our gain. She continued stroking Victoria's shoulders. He's special to you, too, isn't he, Victoria? Victoria nodded without surprise. She had long since grown accustomed to Emma's remarkable empathy. Yes, he is. I've never had a bond with one of my pupils like this before. It's almost as if he were my own son. She let out a bitter laugh. Funny, isn't it? I love him like a son, but I haven't figured out how to show it. He knows, Victoria. No boy I know would do what he did for you at Halloween without loving the person he did it for. He knew it could have backfired at the party, big time, but he went through with it because you gave him the choice. Emma paused. You know, we really don't need his mother. I think your whole circle of friends would love to give Michelle a proper send-off. What do you think of this idea? And with that, the 2 women began to make their plans.